Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. My name is Amy Johnson. I'm going to be your host for today's show, episode 322 of the Canadiens Connection podcast, titled Habs Mailbag. Should Kent Hughes dive into the trade market? That's right. It's a mailbag show today. We're answering your questions. It's going to be a good one. And of course, in order to do that, I'm pleased to be joined in the studio by my co-host, who is the founder and president of Rocket Sports, Mr. Rick Stevens. How are you today?
Doing well.
Yeah.
This episode is all about Habs fans.
Yay.
We've got Habs fans asking questions in the second segment, and then in the third segment, as we always do, we have comments, solutions, directives, all kinds of things.
Very
in the third
outspoken Habs fans this past
Habs
week.
fans. So this is going to be a fun episode.
It is going to be a fun episode. We're going to get you caught up on the latest news about the Canadiens, injury reports, quick game recaps, roster news. We've got some prospect updates. Not only Laval, not only Trois-Rivières, but NCAA as well. We're going to take a closer look at how the Habs prospects playing in college hockey are doing. I have some quotes this week from Kent Hughes that we're going to talk about a little bit, and what he had to say at the GM meetings in Toronto earlier this week, as well as some general news and notes from around the NHL that we think that are pretty important for you to hear. And then, yes, in the second segment, our big topic, it is another edition of the Rocket Sports Mailbag, our early season trades, the answer for the Montreal Canadiens. And let me tell you, Habs fans are very opinionated about this. And so we're going to bring you some questions that we have gotten over the past few weeks from Habs fans and do our best to try to answer them, at least from our perspective. And we've got a great Canadiens Connection question of the week for all of you to answer before we get into, as Rick said, bringing you some really terrific replies and responses and things that you all had to say via a multitude of methodology this past week. Some of you texted in, some of you dropped comments on YouTube, some of you left us comments on social media channels or sent in emails. We had a lot to choose from this week, and so we've got some great things for you coming up here. And if you would like to have your voice heard as a Habs fan for next week's show, well, then all you have to do is reach out to us. Send us a text at the Rocket Sports text line, which is 5853-ROCKET. Again, that's 5853-ROCKET. Also, be sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. Whether that's how you're currently listening to the podcast or not, be sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Just go to InsideTheCanadiens.com and hit subscribe. And you can leave us a comment on the video there as well if you'd like to chime in. Hey, also, when we do these mailbags, we'll give you a heads up. If you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, be sure you hit the notification bell so that you get notified when on our community tab, we put the call out for questions to be submitted for the mailbag, and you'll be able to just drop your comments right there on the community tab on YouTube, and you'll be in the mix.
Here we go.
In the mix for the next edition of the Rocket Sports Mailbag.
And our listeners have figured out that they're more likely to get their comment or question on the air if they include their name and where and their location.
Yeah.
And
just your first name, doesn't it?
Yeah. Just first name, location, and I noticed that on the Rocket Sports text line that people said, "Hey, this is
so and so from so and so such a place."
Happening more and more, so we like that.
That's great. All right, well, let's get right into it here this week. It's been it's been all over the place as far as games go this week. The game. All right, so we wondered on last week's show, could the Canadiens snap their 6-game losing streak with a really odd Monday afternoon 12:30 p.m. game on Remembrance Day / Veterans Day playing in Buffalo? Well, the short answer is yes. They managed to, I guess they thought it was still NFL Sunday because they put up a touchdown, 7-5 over Buffalo, but it did not come without its drama.
It was, well, and it's typical, I guess, of an afternoon game. This one happening on Remembrance Day, U.S. Veterans Day, 12:30 start, and everybody's routines are just all thrown up in the air, and the start is weird, and the game is weird, and there didn't seem to be any kind of pattern to this, other than if you shot it at the net, you had a very good chance it was going in. It was
on either side of the ice.
On either side, both starting goaltenders were pulled in this game for both teams, and on the shot side, it was relatively low event game. The shots were 23-18 for Montreal, and 12 goals between the two teams. 12 goals. They scored 12 gols. So
it's not a banner day to be a netminder.
No, it wasn't, and it's just sloppy and messy, and there was goals that came quickly in succession. There was goals on bad line changes. It was just a messy game. Mm-hmm. Now Marty St. Louis said, just get a win and we can then learn from it and get on a roll and things will snowball. Uh-huh. I don't think that's the win. Yes, they got the win. Yes, they broke the losing streak, but it wasn't a game where you could really learn a lot of lessons from.
Well, and that was pretty apparent then on Thursday night when they traveled to Minnesota, 8:00 Eastern start time. The Habs not winning. Habs haven't won in Minnesota since, in 13 years. It's been a while.
March 2011 was the last time that they won in Minnesota, and the little factoid that really drives that home is the game-winning goal was scored by Andre Kostitsyn. So that you can feel how long ago it was that Montreal had a win in Minnesota.
And they still don't have one.
No.
Because not adding insult to injury, they got blanked in Minnesota. And it wasn't Marc-Andre Fleury in net either.
No, Gustafsson in net. And let's be honest, he had a pretty routine game, lots of pucks hitting him square in the logo, and Montreal didn't mount much offense at all. And I know, the focus at the start of the season was we need to score more goals, and they did, but they couldn't keep the puck out of the net. And then the focus was, okay, wait a minute. We need to keep the puck out of the net, and now we can't score. And that's it. It's just an immature. The word immature has been tossed around with respect to players and the type of game the Canadiens been playing and so on. Honestly and bluntly, that's just an immature way to coach. Is to focus on one thing, solve that problem, while creating other problems. The challenge for NHL caliber coaches is to fix one thing without affecting the other parts of the game. Otherwise, you just get on a seesaw all the way through the season. And it's kind of easy when you abandon offense, as the Canadiens have, or certainly did in Minnesota, to limit scoring chances against. And they limited scoring chances for the most part. The high danger scoring chances in the game were 7. They just allowed 7 high danger scoring chances to Minnesota. But the way they did that was was, as I said, abandon their offense. So they only had 2 high danger scoring chances that they generated from the offensive side. And like I said, it's going to be, if they keep focusing on just one thing, it's going to be a seesaw the rest of the season.
So that puts the Canadiens now at 5-10-2 to start the season. They have a very measly 12 points. They are no longer tied for last place in the NHL. They, I do believe, have sole possession of last place in the NHL. And the goal differential has gotten even worse, hasn't it?
Goal differential, if you've been listening to the podcast, is a very simple and dirty metric, but I think it's a very predictive one. And typically, by the end of the season, the goal differential lines up. The worst goal differential tends to be at the bottom. The best goal differential at the top. The Canadiens right now have the worst goal differential at -24, it's all about, they were supposed to. We talked about this in the offseason when the whole conversation about being in the mix came up, that they were going to have to improve their goal differential by a substantial amount if they were going to get there. And of course, they're nowhere near being on track to do that this season.
They are not. So we'll see if they can find a way to improve. Maybe we can hope. Speaking about hoping, Raphael Harvey-Pinard getting very, very much closer to a return to play. Finally, he's been cleared for contact. He's been practicing wearing a regular jersey. In fact, this morning, while Brendan Gallagher was having a therapy day at morning skate, he slotted in with Josh Anderson and Christian Dvorak. So he's not going to play against Columbus on Saturday night, but he is allegedly getting very close to a return.
And I think if there was a spot for him, he would be playing. He looks ready to play, but the question is, whose spot is he going to take? Mm-hmm. You're not going to pull out Heineman and I know the popular answer is Yoel Armia, but you get more from an Armia than you would from a Raphael Harvey-Pinard, and Armia is effective on the penalty kill. Lucas Condata has come up, and he's quietly been effective doing his job on the fourth line, plays with a bit of an edge. So yeah, it's unless there's an injury or unless you send Condata down, where do you put a Raphael Harvey-Pinard? But we know he's going to get in sooner than later.
That's right. Now, I did mention that Gallagher did not appear at game day skate on Saturday morning. It was a treatment day for him, but he will play against the Blue Jackets, and so that's why it's Harvey-Pinard is not yet going to slot in. Speaking of who's in and who's not, Justin Barron finally will make his first appearance in the lineup in the month of November. He has been scratched since, I believe, October 31st was his last game.
Yeah, it's been a few weeks.
And Jaden Struble will be the one taking his turn watching from the suite.
If you listen to Marty carefully, you know what he's going to do. This was forecast after the Minnesota game that Barron would be in because Marty St. Louis was pretty blunt about the reason in his mind that the Canadiens lost against the Wild, and he pointed the finger directly at Jaden Struble. Jaden Struble took a 4-minute minor, double minor, and Marty said these are the kind of actions that only help the other team. It was kind of an accidental high stick that got him for the double minor, but Marty was furious about it, and maybe was looking for a reason to get Barron back in action, and Jaden Struble gave him that reason on Thursday night.
One guy we won't see yet again will be Michael Pezzetta, a healthy scratch again. Would you believe he's only played 3 games this season so far?
Yeah, and I mean, this gets back to our discussion a while back. Why
re-sign him?
Yeah, all of that.
Yep.
But again, what role does he fill? Whose place would you have him take?
Right.
He may go through much of the season in the press box as a healthy scratch.
And it'll be Sammy Montembeault starting in goal. See how he does.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one kind of bright spot, at least on offensive production for the Canadiens so far this season, has been Cole Caulfield. He's certainly, at least to start the season, was on quite a streak. He's still, he's still lighting the lamp here and there. But if you're expecting him to be selected for the Four Nations face-off tournament to play for Team USA, Pierre LeBrun says maybe temper your expectations because he doesn't believe that Caulfield is likely to be selected by Team USA.
Cole Caulfield has 12 goals on a great pace to start the season. That he's tied for second in the league with a large group of people, one behind Sam Reinhart at 13, who leads the league. Yeah, offense is coming. We heard Marty say, he wasn't particularly happy with Cole Caulfield's game, and it all revolves around the defensive metrics. He's at the bottom in the bottom 10 in the league for NHL forwards when it comes to expected defensive goals above replacement. So for that reason, LeBrun says that you likely won't see him on Team USA for the Four Nations face-off. So we're, and then there's some question about whether Nick Suzuki will be there or not. Sam Montembeault hasn't showed anything to put his name into the discussion. So it may be a lean February for Canadiens fans.
It might be. One other high note that will certainly take place this weekend is Saturday nights prior to the game at the Bell Center, prior to puck drop between the Canadiens and the Blue Jackets. After being inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame this week, Shea Weber is going to be in the building to be added to the Canadiens Ring of Honor in a pregame ceremony on Saturday night, and I think that's going to be a pretty special thing.
Yeah, I think it is. We saw him inducted. He had a really nice speech, and Canadiens fans and Canadiens players and former players are celebrating his honors, both the Hockey Hall of Fame and in the Canadiens Ring of Honor. Saw a social media post from Thomas Plekanec that he was boarding a plane and is on his way to Montreal to be in Montreal Saturday night for that ceremony.
That is great. All right, let's now take a look down on the farm and beyond with the Habs prospect report.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world.
Well, there are a number of Canadiens prospects who had some accolades this week. We're going to start with Sam Harris, who was named NCHC Forward of the Week. Congratulations to him.
He was. He had 3 goals in 2 games. That puts him at the top in the NCAA. He has 10 goals and 5 assists, 15 points in his first 10 games this season for the University of Denver. He's off to a great start. We had him in our spotlight a few weeks back, and congratulations to Sam Harris.
Also, speaking of some notoriety this week, Jacob Fowler, goaltender Jacob Fowler, playing for the Boston College Eagles, the BC Eagles, was named Hockey East co-goaltender of the week. And I really think that he could have had, sole goaltender of the week if maybe this award had been given out after he decked somebody.
Yeah,
which was my favorite gift to send you in for podcast prep, I think, ever.
Well, let's talk about
Let's talk about the
this award was given out at the beginning of the week for last weekend's performance, where he already earned his third shutout in just 9 starts. 9 starts, 3 shutouts, 155 goals against, 943 save percentage.
My goodness.
And a 7-1 winning record. And so, yes, co-goaltender of the week in Hockey East. But the clip from Friday night,
could not.
The Yukon forward that went steaming in and into him and scored on the play, and he took exception, and the blocker shot that he delivered was
just absolutely
very Carey Price-esque. Like, you want to compare him in a number of ways to Carey Price, blocker shots as well. I must have watched that clip 10 times just on repeat.
It was just, yes, it's we're not condoning anybody getting laid out, but maybe a little bit. But this was, he did not hesitate.
No.
He got taken out. He sprawled across the ice, kind of half tumbled over this kid. And as the other kid starts to get up, Jacob Fowler just gets up onto his knees and just immediately the blocker side hand draws back and just douche.
Ejected from the game.
He was ejected,
and
rightfully so.
Yeah.
But it was.
But also, one of the, if you're going to run the goaltender, Jacob Fowler just sent a message to the rest of the league.
Hands off. Let's take our first look of the season at the USCHO Division I poll to look at how the NCAA rankings are shaping up.
Yeah, it's like football. They do a poll, assemble the rankings weekly, and to determine the best teams in the NCAA Division I. And so far, and we'll check in on this as we do every year. Periodically. The number 1 team is the University of Denver. No surprise there.
Again.
Well, and they won last year. And there are 7 Canadiens prospects in the NCAA this season. Sam Harris, who we just talked about, is a member of the number 1 Denver team. Jacob Fowler, who we just talked about, on the number 2 team, Boston College. Minnesota is ranked 3rd in the nation. Luke Mittelstadt. There's a really nice article about Luke Mittelstadt in TVI Sports, and they interviewed his coach, Bob Motzko. We know Bob Motzko, and said, you're going to see this kid has Luke Mittelstadt, that is, has a real chance to play in the NHL. And if he does, that would be gravy for a 7th round pick by the Canadiens. Skipping ahead to Michigan, Michael Hage. We know we've talked about Michael Hage this year. Logan Sawyer's at Providence. Providence College is ranked number 10. Logan Sawyer scored his first NCAA goal this past week in his 10th game, I believe it was. Number 17 is Dartmouth. There's another goaltender there, Emmett Croteau. Croteau was in the USHL last season. This is his first season in the NCAA. The only one that's not ranked is UMD in the top 20 rankings, University of Minnesota Duluth. And that's where you'll find the 7th Canadiens prospect, Jack Smith.
Phew.
Yeah.
Well, we like it, and we'll keep you apprised of how that that listing will shift definitely throughout the year. So we'll keep you updated there. Laval. Let's talk quickly about the Laval Rocket. They are continuing to find ways to win. They had a little, as we mentioned last week, they had a little hiccup last Saturday. snapping their 8-game win streak with a rare loss on the season, just their second loss on the season. Well, they've turned that around this week and taking it the distance in both of their games. They continue their 5-game road trip. Wednesday night, they defeated the Rochester Americans 3-2 in overtime. Logan Mailloux with a beauty of a goal in overtime to clinch that one for the Rocket. And then Friday night, they were in Syracuse playing against, of course, Joel Bouchard and Jesse Ullinen and Joel Teasdale and Toby Paquette-Bisson. And won that one 4-3 in a shootout. Should mention complete props to Jared Davidson, who is a prospect that doesn't get talked about quite enough among maybe the mainstream folks who tend to just focus on the Canadiens. But Jared Davidson is very stealthily continuing to build on a strong second half of his season last year. And in that 4-3 win in the shootout on Friday night, Jared Davidson had 2 goals in regulation. They came 32 seconds apart, one of which was a power play goal. And then he was the only skater on both sides, on both teams, to score in the shootout, which won it for Laval. So Jared Davidson, really doing some pretty tremendous things so far this year. He's had a strong season so far. So,
and Laval is proving that they can also win the close games, win the 1-goal games, winning, as you said, both in extra time this past week. And it's nice to see players that you expect to be their leaders come to the fore in those extra, in overtime, in the shootout. Logan Mailloux, Jared Davidson. We've been talking about Jared Davidson since his Memorial Cup run, and that he is the type of player who can lead. And it's nice to see him finally getting some notice from the mainstream Montreal media, because he's a guy who plays with grit. He's a leader and won't back down, stands up for his teammates, and has got a great shot. So, really good to see this week in Laval.
Absolutely. That puts the Rocket at 11-2 to start the season with 22 points. They are still first in the North Division, and they are second in the entire AHL. They are having a tremendous start to the season. The Trois-Rivières Lions, they had a big win against the Maine Mariners this week, winning 4-1. It's actually the only game that they've had this week so far. And their season is starting. They're still kind of middle in the pack. They're 16th league-wide right now, but with a 5-3-1 record. So they're turning things around after a sluggish start.
And one of Trois-Rivières' rivals is Maine, which, I mean, on the face of it seems odd. But that goes back to the days when Danny Briere was running the Maine Mariners, and there was always the games were more intense. So that's nice to see them take that game in Trois-Rivières.
Definitely. All right, well, let's get to our quotes of the week. And this week, our quotes are coming from Canadiens GM Kent Hughes after the GM meetings that were held in Toronto this week. Just a reminder, every year on the Tuesday following the induction ceremony for the Hockey Hall of Fame, all of the GMs are there in Toronto, and they meet the following morning for a few hours just to kind of set the table and kind of set the agenda for what they're going to discuss in greater detail in their lengthier GM meetings that run the course of a few days in Florida in the month of March. So we talked a little bit last week about some things that were likely going to be talked about and so on and so forth. But Kent Hughes had some things to say as well. I'll start with the first one here, Rick. He says, quote, "When you're losing, you want to give everything to your team to give it a better chance, but you have to be patient and stay the course. We won't do short-term things that would affect our long-term plan." And that sounds pretty similar to, he has said something to that effect frequently over the last year or so, that, you know, when it comes to the trade deadline or free agency, that they don't want to necessarily do something in a panic move that's going to upset the apple cart and disrupt all this rebuild work that they've been doing.
As a dad, when you see your kids failing at something over and over again, you want to reach in and help them somehow. And so that's what Kent Hughes is talking about is that temptation. But will they learn anything? Will they? Will that short-term fix that you can provide, affect negatively what's supposed to happen in the longer term? So. You can understand him saying that. And he said that many, many times about not being drawn into a short-term fix where they're going to have to give up assets that they covet for the long term. So nothing surprising there, but is also, ties into the theme of this show and the title, Will He get involved in the trade market? The other thing he's doing there, I think, is kind of making sure that he doesn't look desperate to his potential trade partners. He's saying, nothing is likely to happen, and that, again, Kent Hughes says he will always leverage the media, and that's what he's doing there. His second quote, and these we don't have audio for these because he provided these quotes at the GM meetings, as you said, in French. So we're giving you the translated version here. I should say that it was Elliot Friedman that said we talked last week that they were going to the GMs were going to spend some time on why is it taking so long for video review? Should less things be under review? Should different things be under review? They ended up talking about the Situation Room a fair bit, according to Friedman, and how better to use. Apparently, they've done all kinds of upgrades in the offseason to the Situation Room. It's state of the art, and they have individuals there that can analyze and often have the answer before the review takes place and before the officials on the ice may not have seen it, but they don't want to take away the authority from the referees, and that would be a bit of a dance with them. Mm-hmm. So that's nothing resolved, of course, but that's the direction of the conversations that happened this week. Anyway, back to Kent Hughes. His second quote, which we found very interesting, was Kent says, "It's important to learn how to win at each level. It also matters to give them a chance to do it down there," talking about Laval. "We for sure look at whether this one or that one can help us right now, but we have to consider if bringing them in and taking them out of that environment would help or hurt their development. There's no easy answer. It's not always black and white, but we try to be guided in our decisions by what would be best in the long term." So, there's from Canadiens fans, one of the potential solutions is bring up Joshua Waugh, bring up Barry Boulay, bring back Logan Mailloux, bring up Jakub Dobish. Canadiens fans are looking for a quick fix, and I should say Barry Boulay is injured right now, so he wouldn't be available. But that's the kind of noise that you hear in the Habs fan community, and he's saying, we have to think long term. We have to think about having those prospects in the best environment possible. So it's basically saying, I think Kent is trying to reset expectations, lower the expectations, and kind of forecasting that nothing is going to happen. None of these quick fixes are going to happen. And then if they do, it's not that he's abandoning his trade calls. It's not that they're abandoning reviewing whether recalling a player would be effective. It's just if it happens, then it's a surprise and fans are happy. The other thing he talked about that this season is about gathering information. And to me, it looks like he's in motion. He is redefining the mission for this season. We heard that the mission for this season was supposed to be being in the mix and playing competitive games, important games, meaningful games in March and April. Now they're resetting it that this is information gathering season, and that exposing our players to difficult, challenging, frustrating situations is a way to gather information about them. And he said, quote, at the stage we're at now, the more we can learn about our players will help us for the future and the decisions we will have to make. So he's preparing the fan base, and maybe a bit of a message to his players as well, that this season is going to be about information gathering, which it has in the past, but the focus has changed. The real focus of this season has changed, and that's because of where they find themselves in the standings.
Absolutely. Oh, it is. I don't envy he and Jeff Gorton at the moment traversing all of this. It can't be, they call it growing pains for a reason, because it can be a little painful to go through. All right. Before we get to, I know you mentioned the potential that, of course, he's still taking trade calls and whatnot. So before we get to our Rocket Sports Mailbag, where a big question is, could early season trades be part of a solution here? We just have some notes from around the league. First and foremost, trades are happening already, and one involves a former Montreal Canadiens player, Lars Eller. The Washington Capitals reacquired him. He's back with the Caps in the U.S. Capitol. Pittsburgh Penguins trading him for a 2025 fifth round pick and a 2027 third round pick.
It's 2024, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 3 years from now, they're including a draft pick.
Right.
It's an interesting trade. Kyle Dubas, the GM of the Pittsburgh Penguins, has let everybody in the league know that the Penguins are open for business, and everybody but Sidney Crosby is available.
Which means Evgeny Malkin is.
Well, Chris Letang.
And Chris Letang.
But Lars Eller is a good player. Lars Eller is a very useful player. Lars, I should say, Stanley Cup winner, Lars Eller. And he played a big role in the Capitals' Cup run. And he goes back to the Capitals, where I'm sure they're very happy to have him, especially for, they didn't give up that much. A fifth round next year at the next draft, and a third rounder in 2027. It looks like Kyle Dubas, there was no salary retention, so he cleared Eller's salary, and he looks to be making more moves. I think, it's mid-November, and the Canadiens fans are looking at that saying, okay, why not Kent Hughes? Why, if the trade market is opening up, why can't Kent Hughes get involved in it? And as you said, we'll talk about that.
That's right. We also mentioned that Kent Hughes' quotes came at the GM meetings in Toronto this week, because, of course, that was on the heels of the Hockey Hall of Fame 2024 inductee class, 2024 class induction, which was held on Monday. And Canadiens defenseman Shea Weber officially inducted in this year's class. What was really nice was the magnitude of current and former Canadiens players, all of whom had been teammates of Shea Weber, who made the trip to be there, some of which kind of carpooled together after their game ended in Buffalo on Monday afternoon and quickly made the jaunt up to Toronto to be there for the ceremony. Others who flew in, but it's quite a list of who's who. Is kind of a nostalgic. I think you had even someone had posted the Angela Price's photo of all of them together, and it was like, oh, it's like the old gang back together.
Jake Allen, Yoel Armia, Brandon Gallagher, Josh Anderson, Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, Carey Price, Jeff Petrie, Ben Sherratt, Carl Alsner, and Paul Byron, and some partners, spouses and partners as well there. Nice. But if you want to know about leadership, that's leadership. That's Shea Weber being recognized for being their leader. That all of those players, former teammates, wanted to show up and congratulate Shea Weber and show their respect for a leader that gave it all as captain of the Montreal Canadiens.
Of course, every inductee does a bit of media before the ceremony and so forth. And on this week's, well, it's usually a 32 Thoughts article from Elliot Friedman, but this was 24 Thoughts this week. He had an interesting exercise that he did with all of the inductees. He says, every year at the Hockey Hall of Fame introductory media conference, I asked the inductees who gave them the most memorable compliment ever received. And Rick, he goes on to talk about what happened when he got to Shea Weber.
He said, quoting Friedman, he said, "This exercise was a complete failure with Shea Weber, who couldn't name one." Shea said, "I have trouble accepting compliments. I get defensive."
And I could totally see that. I mean, he is such an introverted, shy, doesn't like the spotlight kind of guy. So I could see that he's the type to also get really uncomfortable if people compliment him.
Yeah.
So
it's brilliant.
I get defensive. Next year, there will be some new faces and new perspectives on the selection committee. The Hockey Hall of Fame announcing that for the 2025 nomination and election proceedings, Jarome Iginla and Eddie Olczyk are joining the selection committee.
Yeah, why is that important? Well, there's going to be a name there that Canadiens fans are going to want to see inducted, and a player that they're very familiar with. And so Jarome Iginla, Eddie Olczyk are going to have a big say in that. I don't know if that's good or bad, but we wanted you to know who will be involved.
And Elliot Friedman touched on that as well in his 24 Thoughts, saying, good luck to the selection committee in 2025 with the 4 male inductee limit, because newly eligible next year is more than 4 guys. Zdeno Chara's up for it next year, Ryan Getzlaf, Duncan Keith, Joe Thornton, and Carey Price. And I think there will be a continental-wide revolt if Carey Price does not get inducted into the Hall of Fame next year.
No disrespect to any of the others. And Elliot Friedman himself says all are deserving of immediate induction. And,
yes, and I
think
agree.
many would agree. And that kind of highlights that perhaps there shouldn't be limits according to gender. He says someone's going to be offended. Carey Price, though, was the player that was the best of his generation. And that,
at his position,
even beyond his position.
Well, true.
Because poll after poll after poll, the NHLPA said, which player do you want in goal? Which player do you want in the locker? Which player do you want for Game 7 of a Stanley Cup final? And it was always the same answer. Overwhelmingly, it was Carey Price, who could just be the difference. And all those other players are deserving, but none was like Carey Price in that respect.
I agree. Just as an aside, I would, if I had to guess right at this moment, I would say that it'll be a toss-up between Getzlaff and Duncan Keith on who's going to be the one that's probably going to get left off. I think Jumbo Joe will make it. I think I would like to think Carey Price is a lock for it next year, and I would imagine Zdeno Chara probably is as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of comes down to tossing a coin, but it'll be interesting. And I liked the end of Elliot's comment here saying, not to mention those who are still waiting who are already eligible. Curtis Joseph, Alexander McGillney, Keith Tkachuk, who Jeremy Roenick shouted out. And Friedman says, maybe they can induct Tkachuk as a builder since he added Brady and Matthews to the NHL, which
That's novel.
it's taking it in a new way. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, it is time for us to take our first break here on the Canadiens Connection podcast. Coming up right after we hear from the folks from Raycon and DraftKings with some great incentives for all of you, we are going to tackle our big topic, which is digging into the Rocket Sports Mailbag, our early season trades, the answer for the Montreal Canadiens. We are going to talk about that, answer that question, and so many more that you have submitted right after this. So stay with us. You're listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
Oh boy, it is November, and you know what that means? Black Friday and Cyber Monday are just a few short weeks away, and it's such an exciting time of year. With Raycon, you get an amazing deal on premium audio products every day of the year. But hey, that doesn't mean they're not having any sales for Black Friday or Cyber Monday. No, far from it. Guess what? They're actually doubling down on their amazing value by offering our viewers up to 30% off site-wide. My favorite product of theirs, Raycon's Everyday Earbuds. I use these earbuds every single day. Plenty of new features that make them kind of more of a must-have for audio lovers. There's now a 32-hour battery life on them and multi-point connectivity that lets you pair with 2 devices at once. Having good noise cancellation can be difficult to find with a pair of earbuds at a really accessible price point, but not with Raycon's everyday earbuds. Raycons start at just half the price as the other guys, which was what was really surprising for me the first time I tried the everyday earbuds, because I'm a voice actor by trade. So I have some pretty high quality headphones, both over the ear and in-ear earbuds, from some pretty big names. And I was really surprised at how good the quality of the Raycons are, particularly given their price point. So they're already an incredible deal before you even factor in their Black Friday or Cyber Monday offer of up to 30% off site-wide. Those kinds of deals at those kinds of prices means you could pick up a pair or 2 of Raycon's everyday earbuds as an amazing gift for somebody for the holidays, and also pick up a pair for yourself as well. I mean, why not? Now is the perfect time to scoop them up if you haven't done so already. And don't worry, if you're not as impressed with them as I am, don't worry about it. Raycon offers a 30-day happiness guarantee, so you really can't lose. It is time to save big for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Go to buyraycon.com/THPN today to get up to 30% off site-wide. That's right, you'll get up to 30% off everything on Raycon's website when you go to buyraycon.com/THPN. The quest for the Stanley Cup starts now. The puck's dropping on the 2024-25 season. Get in on all the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking your favorite team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers, bet just $5 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice. Copyright NHL 2024, all rights reserved.
Welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. I am Amy Johnson. You can find me on Twitter at Flyers Rule if you'd like to give me a follow over there on X. And with me in the studio is, of course, our president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. You'll want to be sure to follow him on X, Twitter, whatever you call it, at the Rocket Sports account, which is at Rocket Sports. Also, be sure to follow this podcast at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And don't forget to hit subscribe, whether it's on your favorite podcast app or if you prefer to watch our podcast on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. And even if you don't watch the podcast on YouTube, just go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, because we do other things on YouTube besides just post Canadiens Connection. All right. We are more than a month into the season. I am very excited because my American Thanksgiving is right around the corner. The gravy is calling. The mashed potatoes are calling. It's coming. It's late this season, though. It's the very last, practically the last day of the month this year. But it means it's the perfect time to open up the Rocket Sports Mailbag. We love these kinds of episodes because we are always so happy to hear from all of our Canadiens Connection listeners and viewers. We love to hear from you. Sometimes, like every week, as we're going to do coming up in the next segment, we always read your responses to our connection of the Canadiens Connection question of the week. But we also get questions quite often as well, just about, the Canadiens or the prospects, or sometimes it's a combination of making a statement and asking a question, those kinds of things. And so we squirrel those away. And when we get enough of them put together, we pick the best ones and open up the mailbag. So this time, the mailbag is just absolutely jam-packed with questions about Marty St. Louis, gee, I wonder why, Kent Hughes, gee, I wonder why, Habs goaltending, gee, I wonder why, and potential trades that could help the Montreal Canadiens. I will make a note that sometimes the questions that we get can be part of longer, lengthier just responses that people have submitted. So sometimes the questions, we do lightly edit them just for clarity's sake, but they are generally intact as we get them. So we're going to kick things off with Greg, who wrote in from Elliott Lake, Ontario, saying, and this was actually obviously just this week, with the Pens unloading Eller, Dubas is getting the trade season underway early. Do you think that Hughes will try to trade Dvorak soon so that he isn't caught holding him after the deadline? And which of the players on an expiring contract will be re-signed? That's two very good questions. And as we said, the title of this particular episode is, should Kent Hughes dive into the trade market? And sure, as Greg mentions here, with the Eller trade, trade season is open, really. And so should he trade Dvorak? It's one of the ones that we have said needs to go. And which players who are on an expiring contract will be re-signed?
So the last one first, and because it's come up a fair bit since the beginning of the season, and even before the start of the season, I was saying of that list, probably Jake Evans is the most valuable, just because he's so versatile, just because he anchors the penalty kill top unit. And then Jake Evans has gone on to have a great start to the season, and you've seen Jake Evans started centering the third line, which maybe was was a surprise to some Habs fans that would have expected to see him on the fourth line, centering the fourth line. That was Dvorak. And then more recently, he's been bumped up to center the Canadiens' second line, and has stuck there right now. He's centering Newhook, another player who's supposed to be the second line center, or Doc. But it's Evans ahead of Newhook and Doc, centering the second line between Caulfield and Newhook. So Jake Evans is he is the most valuable player of the four. The question is going to be can the Canadiens afford him? Because his value has increased, and will they be able to re-sign him as he becomes a free agent, or sign him before that? Yeah, and as far as getting into the trade market, Dvorak is obviously the obvious trade chip there. Mm-hmm. As David Savard. David Savard may have a little bit of value for a playoff bound team, but Christian Dvorak could shore up and give some depth to a team that's headed to the playoffs. The thing is that this was and we just talked about Kent Hughes kind of redefining the mission of the season and lowering expectations, but he had kind of committed to his players that the team was going to be in the mix, and that was to make his players happy, and that was to make his head coach happy, that he wasn't counting his team out before the season had begun. So what if Kent Hughes in mid-November or by Thanksgiving trades a veteran away? What kind of message is that going to send? And I think that's a legitimate reason why he wouldn't get involved in a trade right now. Except the players, the players didn't keep their end of the bargain on being in the mix. Mm-hmm. And this is a business. And if Kent Hughes gets an offer for Christian Dvorak, which I don't know how many teams are out there looking for a Christian Dvorak, he's got to. He's got to consider it. So I don't think it's likely that you'll see an early, see him trading Dvorak early. But he shouldn't hold back based on a commitment to the players.
Chris writes in from Albany, New York, and he's got some opinions apparently about Marty St. Louis. He says, how has an inexperienced coach with a losing record developed immunity in Montreal? Why are the media unwilling to hold St. Louis to any level of accountability? I heard that MSL has the second worst coaching record in Canadiens history. Chris, we hear you. We hear the frustration. And I think a lot of people we actually talked about this a little bit a week or two ago, and maybe that's what prompted this response as well. I mean, I would love the answer to that question. He's starting to get a little bit of criticism here and there, but I feel like people hold back a bit when it comes to Marty.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That there is an aura around Marty St. Louis and his playing career that kind of overshadows and maybe blurs the vision of people when they look at the kind of coach he is. And also, the same kind of what was said about Marty St. Louis a few months into his coaching career. Those are the kinds of compliments he's still getting about his inspirational messages, about the fact that he, has experienced everything a player can experience and can relate to them, all those kinds of things. there isn't anything new that's said. And I think that Canadiens fans have been extremely patient with the rebuild, but there were expectations going into this season that they would see some team progress, not just individual progress, but team progress, and that hasn't happened. And there was our show last week was, have they taken a step back? And I think all of that is fair, that Marty St. Louis is starting to get some criticism. Marty St. Louis doesn't like criticism, and
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't like to be questioned, and he likes to be in charge, and he likes to think that his ideas are the best. He likes to think that he's the smartest guy in the room, and that's one of the reasons that he's finding it so hard to bring in someone with more knowledge, with more experience at the coaching level than he has, and didn't bring in that experienced coach over the summer. So I guess to answer the question directly, yeah, if you look at the points percentage rate, and we're not talking about coaches who coached a handful of games in Montreal. Marty's coached over 200 games already, so he has a record to go on. His points percentage is .431. That's now, the Canadiens have had some incredible teams and incredible coaches, so that's going to pale in comparison to most of the head coaches that the Canadiens have had over the years. And yes, Marty St. Louis is second to the bottom. On the bottom is Dom Ducharme. It's only Dom Ducharme who is worse in that particular stat. I think it can be summed up to say that Marty St. Louis, we've seen him be effective when he's been able to mentor individuals. He's had some successes and some failures. He's failed with respect to, say, a Josh Anderson. Brendan Gallagher has been successful when he's gone back to being Brendan Gallagher rather than following the Marty advice. Cole Caulfield's been Cole Caulfield's been the most notable success. So he has been effective mentoring individuals, not been effective teaching the team as a whole. And that maybe says that his strength is in dealing with individuals. And maybe he would have been more well suited to a different role other than head coach. But we know Marty felt he was in a position to say to Jeff Gordon and Kent Hughes, I'm not leaving my family for anything other than a head coach or bust. You take your choice. And because Gordon and Hughes, brought him in with that stipulation, he has now the power, and boosted by the adoration of the fans and certainly the media. Marty is developing somewhat of an immunity, although there's cracks in that, as you said. We're starting to see some questions and certainly some criticism, as Chris from Albany has just done here.
Another place where we've certainly had questions and concerns for a while, that is certainly proving out a bit, is in the net. And Glenn from Bathurst, New Brunswick says, I feel that the Habs season wouldn't look so bad if they were getting average NHL goaltending. Montembeault has been overhyped. He's not a starter. And Primo has lost his confidence. What's a reasonable solution this year for Montreal's goaltending problems? And I think that's a good question, because whether you like it or not, whether you as a fan like Sam Montembeault or like Caden Primo, they are not getting the job done.
Yeah. I think Glenn has nailed the problem. And obviously, Sam Montembeault has been overhyped. Glenn says he's not a starter, an NHL starter. I'm assuming that he means there. Primo is, he's a very shaky goaltender. When things go well, they go well. When things go bad, they go terrible. And all of that, he's nailed it. Glenn's question here in a solution, that's the tough part. That's really tough, especially where we are in the season.
They've backed themselves into a corner.
They have. They really have. Because, yes, you look at any of the metrics and Montembeault, Primo, they're just not cutting it. Is Primo worse than Montembeault? Yes, but telling everybody how bad Primo is doesn't make Montembeault a good goaltender. Montembeault's 38th if you look at goals saved above expected. 38th in the league. Montembeault, that's in the backup category. 68th for Primo. But what's the solution? Some are saying, what about a veteran goaltender? Adding a veteran goaltender. We saw a couple of veteran goaltenders picked up this past week on waivers. James Reimer went to Buffalo. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who was having a great stretch, and I think he was named for second or third star last week. Anyways, injured in the Montreal game. Winnipeg picked up Kakkonen. So maybe there's a veteran goalie that could solve the problem, but does that put you into the same, and would the Canadiens be reluctant to send Caden Primo down to Laval to recapture his game for fear of losing him, as they were last year? And then you're right back into that 3 goalie tandem that nobody particularly seemed to like. So that's a messy solution. Bringing somebody up, you can talk to this better than I can. Jakub Dobeš, Connor Hughes, both having great seasons in Laval. Do you want to disturb that chemistry? I just find it, and not that I'm saying that the Canadiens want to have Jake Allen back, but the funny thing is that the problems that they're having, and the right-handed veteran defenseman, the goaltender who could go in and play the tough games, it's all in the transactions that happened with New Jersey. Jake Allen with the Devils, Jonathan Kovacevic with the Devils. Both of those players could help the Canadiens this season, and that's just kind of ironic.
As I said, they have backed themselves into this corner, and unfortunately, the writing was on the wall. If you could look past the fandom of the situation at the end of last year, the writing was right there on the wall, and we talked about it over the summer. If they're going to go with a Sam Montembeault, Caden Primo tandem next year, this is not. It's likely not going to go the way they want it to, and this is one of those occasions where I would frankly have been much happier to be proven wrong, because it's just not. It's not a situation they need to find themselves in again. At this point, I would say if I had my druthers, if they could figure out a way to pick up a veteran goaltender to be a tandem with Montembeault, then I think that's probably the most salvageable way for them to approach the rest of the season. I believe, and I'm not saying I want Primo to go to Laval. I think probably the best case scenario for the organization and for Caden Primo would be for Caden Primo to get claimed on waivers. I think Primo needs a new start with a new team that's a little less in the spotlight, where he can get some of the pressure off of him. And then yeah, you don't, because if he makes it through waivers and he ends up in Laval, well, then that means Dobeš and Connor Hughes are going to get the short end of that stick. And you're absolutely right. Those two are a big part of the reason why Laval has only lost 2 games all season. Jakub Dobeš, we know that he had a very strong NHL training camp with the Canadiens. Obviously made the case that at some point this season he could even come up for a look for a couple of games. He has continued that strong play in Laval. If you if Connor Hughes' numbers at all look competitive and or even better than Dobish, it's because he had to fill in for Dobish for a few games while Dobish was out with injury. But Dobish has come back just as strong. In fact, he backstopped the Laval Rocket Wednesday night and Friday night this week, both in the overtime win and the shootout win. He looks exceptional. The nice surprise is that Connor Hughes has been just as strong as his backup goaltender. He stepped right into things when Dobish went out with injury. He can come in, on a 3-game week like this. I imagine that he's going to play in Rochester on Saturday night for Laval. And he's already had a shutout this season. He's also very confident and very strong in net. And I think the two of them need to continue to just build on that. Like you said, Rick, don't take them out of that situation. They've created great chemistry with one another. Don't rock the Laval boat, because Laval is the one success story that the organization really has cooking right now this season. And I say you don't mess with that at this point in time. I think goaltenders take the longest to develop. Let's not run into what unfortunately happened for Caden Primo, was that he was brought up to the NHL too soon a number of years ago. I don't want to see that happen to Dobish. I think just let them be. So I don't know what the right solution is, because as I say, you don't want Caden Primo to come into that mix, and then suddenly there's that 3 goaltender thing, and that doesn't usually work out well. I don't really know what the answer is, and unless they bring in a veteran goaltender, and that third goaltender, probably Caden Primo, sits most nights, stays with the Canadiens, and they go through that unfortunate 3-headed monster again. It's a situation where I don't think there's any one good answer. They're going to have to kind of pick a solution that's the lesser of however many evils they have to choose from.
Yeah, and Connor Hughes, talking about veteran goaltenders and bringing in veteran goaltenders, you could categorize Connor Hughes as a veteran goaltender. Yes. He's 28 years old, and he's able to bring some things to Jakub Dobish. But is he a solution for Montreal? I wouldn't want to take him away from Jakub Dobish, because it's important that he continues to develop. And Connor Hughes isn't. We don't know how he would react in the NHL. This is his first exposure to North America, other than his junior hockey. He's played all of his hockey, his pro hockey, in Switzerland, and so we don't know if he would be able to manage the NHL game, and best to leave him as is. The other thing about Connor Hughes, someone in the organization that doesn't get enough credit. Who's Connor Hughes? Who discovered this Connor Hughes? How did this name come to how are the Canadiens lucky enough to find this guy? Vinny Riondo. Yeah. Vinny Riondo doesn't get enough credit.
No, he doesn't.
And he was behind spotting Connor Hughes and helping to get him to the Montreal organization.
Theo writes in from Pointe Claire, Quebec. We love these questions, by the way. Keep them coming. We love it. Theo from Pointe Claire, Quebec says, Friedman says that Juracek is available in Columbus. What about a swap of 2 young right-handed D who are both off to slow starts in the NHL? Offer Barron up for Juracek. Get it done, Kent.
Easy. Yeah, just wipe your hands. It's done.
There you go. 1 for 1.
Good question, Theo.
It is a good question.
I don't know about the solution, but it's a good question.
And Juracek is a great player.
Oh, Juracek. Yeah, absolutely. I was touting Juracek as someone that the Canadiens should have looked at during that draft. But he's as is said here, he's had a slow start to his career in Columbus. He's had some run-ins, I guess that would be described that way with management in the past. New management there, of course. But Friedman is saying to watch that situation, and because the ice time, is below 10 minutes for Juracek, and that's if he's in the lineup. So he might be certainly available. But I think, and one thing, I know it's difficult to do because Canadiens fans look at issues from a Canadiens perspective. What would be best for our team? But when you're suggesting trades, you have to look at it from the other team's perspective as well, because they have to have some reason to execute the trade. Juracek for Barron, that solves problems on both sides for Montreal, moving Barron, who may be getting out of favor, and bringing in somebody on the right side who has a lot of potential. Juracek is big, he's physical, he's stay at home, he's got an incredible shot, and just it hasn't worked out in Columbus. But that doesn't address what the Blue Jackets need, and the Blue Jackets themselves have a bit of a logjam at defense. What they need a center. And so there's been, the Minnesota broadcasters were talking about it this week, saying Marco Rossi. Would Marco Rossi, a Marco Rossi Juracek trade make sense? So think from the Columbus perspective when you're putting together these trade suggestions, and I guarantee you're going to come up with a player that you don't want to see. Columbus is going to want a player that you don't want to see traded. Would it take Michael Hage and other pieces for a Juracek? It's going to be something like that, something that you're not going to like. And so think about that when you're suggesting that you'll be willing to bring in a player. You also have to consider what's going out.
All right. We have one more question that has come in. And like I said at the top of the show, if you'd like to be considered for a question in our next edition of a Rocket Sports Mailbag, be sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the notification bell. We will put out a post on our community tab that you'd get in your notifications saying, hey, y'all, we're about to open up the Rocket Sports Mailbag. Drop us a comment with your questions, and hopefully you will be included. So this question comes from Trevor in, am I going to pronounce this correctly? Estevan.
Yeah.
Estevan. Okay, I had it
Nice.
right. Trevor in Estevan, Saskatchewan, saying, I admit that I'm losing confidence in Hughes and Gordon. Slavkovsky, Doc, and Newhook were all supposed to be top 6 impact players, and they're all off to bad starts to the season. Are they ever going to achieve their potential?
That's a good question.
It's a roll of the dice at this point.
Are they going to achieve their potential? And listen, I think there was a while there that Hughes and Gordon were walking on water, and they could do no wrong. I've said before, in any transaction, I hate when fans use the word fleece. And that was especially around the Kirby Dach trade. Hughes fleeced the Blackhawks. How could they? Why would the Blackhawks give up on a Kirby Dach so early? Such a young player, a player with such potential. I think you're seeing right now evidence of why the Blackhawks were willing to let him go. And yes, there's an injury history. There's multiple injuries, and he's working through coming back. But this isn't all injury related. He hasn't looked very engaged. He hasn't looked very competitive. He hasn't looked very willing to get into battles. And that's more about will than it is about recovering from an injury. There's an aspect to that. I get it. But I think it's fair to say, will he ever reach his potential? And his potential, the Canadiens are banking on the fact that Kirby Dach is going to be a center, either the first line center or the second line center. For their plan to work, for them to accelerate the rebuild, which they're trying to do by completing this trade, Kirby Dach has to be a center. He has to be a top two, one of the top two centers, because they gave up a fair bit for him. It was Alexander Romanov. It was a 4th round pick and a 3rd round pick. That package, and there's a couple of teams involved. They're involved the Islanders and then Chicago, but that was the package that they put together to land Dach. And they give that number 13 pick overall that the Islanders got. That was Frank Nazar and anyway, the package that they gave up was substantial and is only worthwhile if you're going to get a center out of this. Same thing goes for Newhook, that he was supposed to be, a versatile player that could play either center or wing in the top 6. And Newhook, a 1st round pick and a 2nd round pick, 31 and 37. That's a substantial package, and he has not looked very good either. And he's been played for the most part on the wing, as I said earlier, against Columbus. He'll be on the right side of Jake Evans. So I think this is, will they ever achieve their potential? I think that's the question that's going to decide whether this rebuild is successful or not.
I would agree with that, because it was kind of like the big moves that were supposed to set the stage and set the foundation to kind of lift the team up while the youngest prospects were still learning and developing. And unfortunately, that just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I just realized I said the 13th for the 13th overall eventually went to Chicago. Frank Nazar belongs to Chicago.
Yes,
anyway,
that's okay.
Clear that up.
We understand. All right. Well, that was those were 5 really smart and very appropriate questions from some of our fans and listeners and viewers. So thank you to all of you who have submitted questions. Be sure to send your questions anytime. If you ever have questions, we want to hear them. We're going to put them away, and you could have your question answered on a future edition of the Rocket Sports Mailbag. But what you can do for us right now is answer our question, which is our Canadiens Connection question of the week. And I'll be really curious to see what our fans have to say about this one. Which early season trade would you make to salvage this season for the Canadiens? And I think that we're going to have a good variety of answers on this one, because I think there's a lot of different choices and a lot of reasons behind all those choices. So answer that question for us. What early season trade would you make to salvage this season for the Montreal Canadiens? Send us a text at the Rocket Sports text line, 5853-ROCKET. Again, that's 5853-ROCKET. If you're on YouTube, drop us a comment down in the comment sections to answer the question, or send us a message on Twitter at Habs Connection. We want to hear from you, and you could hear your answer on next week's show. We're going to take our final break here on the Canadiens Connection podcast. And coming up next, we are going to dig in and read some of your best responses from last week's Canadiens Connection question of the week. And there were some good ones. We had lots to choose from, so you're going to want to check those out. First, however, we're going to hear from our sponsors over at Game Time, and then we'll be back right after this. You are listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast right here on Rocket Sports Radio. Getting back to watching Habs games on TV most nights of the week is pretty fun. It's even better when you can experience the Canadiens live. Whether they're at home at the Bell Center or on the road, Game Time will have you covered this season to get you the best opportunities for great deals on seats to see your favorite NHL team live.
Game Time sets itself apart from other third-party ticket sellers in a lot of ways. You're going to filter out all the fluff with the Game Time app, and you're just going to get incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste a lot of time sifting through thousands of ticket offers on other apps. So let's just take a look here. And I'm just taking a look at their interactive ticket map, and I'm seeing that ticket prices on Game Time are starting at $62. I'm even seeing, though, if you want to get down in the reds, there are tickets under $200 down in the reds, and I'm talking like in the lower third of the reds. There are some great deals. What else do I love about the app? Seat views before you buy. If there is one thing that I am obsessive about when I'm buying tickets for a hockey game or even for concerts and shows and things like that, which Game Time also has tickets available for, I want to know, particularly if it's at a venue that I'm not necessarily familiar with, like say I'm checking out a Habs game on the road, I want to know exactly what my view from my seat is going to look like. And Game Time, its app, has a really cool feature that you get a panoramic example of what your seat that you're looking at purchasing will look like before you get to buy it. Lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection. They even have a feature that you can toggle on their app called all-in pricing, which shows the complete total to buy the tickets up front, including any taxes and fees and things like that, so that you don't get any surprises at checkout when you think, oh, well, let me just buy these tickets for $100, and then you go to checkout and it ends up costing you $180 or something like that. You know, you're going to get all-in pricing right up front. Lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Love that. And ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets, whether it's for the NHL or for a concert or a show. Take the guesswork out of buying those tickets with Game Time picks. And we've got a great incentive for our listeners. Thanks to the folks over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. It's free. It's simple. All you have to do is punch in your email address. I just did it today. And use code THPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code THPN for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
And welcome back to this episode of the Canadiens Connection podcast right here on Rocket Sports Radio. Of course, this is episode number 322. We're just flying along here, aren't we? Don't forget to follow at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Visit our website at canadiensconnection.fm. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast, whether it's on your favorite podcast app or on our YouTube channel. And in this segment, we like to let you have your say in this segment. We hope you've been keeping up with all of our content throughout the week. We've mentioned our YouTube channel is at InsideTheCanadiens.com. Subscribe there. The Rocket Hockey Report, which I host there, all about the Laval Rocket and the prospects, that will return next week. And we just want to hear from you and make sure that you are keeping apprised of all of the news as we put it out throughout the week. This week, our Canadiens Connection question of the week: which early season trade would you make to salvage the season for the Montreal Canadiens? So don't forget, we want to hear your responses to that, your ideas about that. You can text us on the Rocket Sports text line at 585-3-ROCKET. Last week, last week's episode was at the very end of that 6-game losing streak, and things were starting to look a little bleak, both for the Canadiens and for their fans, and even for us as commentators and journalists. I mean, it starts to get a bit worrisome. And so the question last week was an apt one. It was, have the Montreal Canadiens taken a step back in their rebuild, and who should be held accountable? It's a big question. And we had a variety. We had viewers and listeners sending in messages all over the place.
Absolutely.
Including our own team members.
Including our own team members. We have a Rocket Sports Slack, internal Slack, that we communicate on with all of our team members. We have a medical consultant. He's Dr. Stephen Morris, and you've heard him on periodically to give some really insightful comments and explanations about injuries. His comment was about our discussion on we give typically, not today, but typically we give an Ivan Nemitov update. And last week it was about his the video that was out with his press conference with sitting beside his head coach, the head coach of SKA St. Petersburg, Roman Rotenberg. And Steven says, Amy, your fake laugh as Demidov made me laugh out loud. Rick, awesome podcast as usual. So thanks for that, Steven. And we avoided the fake Russian accent that you...
Hey.
Well...
Hey. No, yeah. I had written Stephen back as well. It's always it's a small little victory inside if I can make any of our team members, well, any of our listeners, but especially our team members, if I can make them laugh, then my job's done here. So thank you for listening. Always appreciate the listen and the support, and we love to hear even from our team members because they are just good people.
So let me take a couple from our Rocket Sports text line. If you want to reach us via text, it's easy, and people have certainly figured that out. 5853-ROCKET. That's 585-376-2538. 5853-ROCKET. Send us a text anytime, day or night. And last week we had a text that was pretty simple. It said, give me a top 5 pick. And I said it was unnamed, and I think I said it was from the Southwestern Ontario region. Well, this week we got another one from that number, and he said, hi, it's Jerry from Waterloo, Ontario. So thank you, Jerry. Good to hear from you, and good to have a name for the comment. And Jerry was responding to, as you said, have the Canadiens taking a step back in their rebuild and who should be held accountable. Jerry from Waterloo, Ontario said, Habs need to waive Caden Primo as soon as possible. It's over for him. Sam Montembeault is too comfortable. His position is too safe. Bring up Jakub Dobish to cause a competition.
Ooh.
We just kind of talked about that there. Well, Jerry has a solution. He goes on to say, in 3 to 4 years, we will be on the verge of being a perennial playoff team only, and at that time, only 5 to 6 of the current roster players will be there. Let's get 1 or 2 more first rounders to bolster the future even better. We talked about the defensive system as well in that Sportsnet article saying that the Canadiens should change their system ASAP. And Jerry says the defensive system that Marty has been working on is obviously what is making the team look like it's regressed. But I trust that he's correct in switching to it. However, Laval hasn't been doing it, and it seems odd that a difficult D situation hasn't been mandated on the farm for all players in the system to learn at some time. Pascal Vincent, Logan Mayu said they're doing something a little bit different, but it is some form of the hybrid. Jared goes on to say, regression or advancement, pause, I'll take a pause until January. Get some competition in net for now and some feisty players from the farm like Tuck. That's an interesting comment, yeah. And certainly Tuck is the kind of player that plays with some edge. Another comment to our text line, 5853-ROCKET. This is, hi, I'm Mario from South Florida. I do believe that the Habs have taken a step back. I love Marty, but I also think Marty and his staff need to step down. He's brought us this far, but I don't think he's the guy to take us to the promised land. Joel Quenville, question mark. Thanks, Amy and Rick. I enjoy the podcast, and we enjoy hearing from you too. Mario from South Florida.
Yeah. Hi, Mario. Thanks very much. We also had some terrific replies on our YouTube channel. And so I have a few of those here. She26 writes in and says, huge congratulations to Mr. Shea Weber. Amazing listening to the kind of person he was and is, well deserved. And she says she couldn't agree more from the 56-minute, 24-second mark. Very precise with the time coding, Miss She26. I like it. She says, none of these guys are doing okay. And I just had to watch the bag skate that they went through. And I found it both disgusting and gross. Unfortunate. Bag skates are not pretty to do. They're not pretty to watch. They're sometimes a necessary evil, but not used as little as possible, I should say. She goes on to say, I hope MSL's ego felt better after that. I don't believe any of these guys really thought they deserved it. MSL should be the one having to bag skate. Well,
he's Mr. Leg Days, so he could probably do a bag skate. Now, the difference is he wouldn't have to play a game shortly thereafter.
That's right. She goes on to say, so, Rick, I'm going to have to use the word cringe after seeing it, which is how
that was in reference to the Demidov
press conference
head coach. Yeah, that was cringy.
She says, the team has not their fault, definitely regressed. There is no doubt in my mind. Who's to blame? The entire brass. And she finishes by saying, this is terrific. As my dad says, quote, the fish rots from the head down.
All right.
And that's a great way of putting it. It's a great way of putting it. We also have a comment from Voicigi. I know I mispronounced that. I'm sure it's a mashup of maybe some initials and so forth. So I apologize. But they say Montreal Canadiens would be on the winning track having Patrick Waugh behind the bench. They owed him the job. That's something to think about. And at Habinations always has an entertaining way of responding and had a great comment. He says, well said. No Demidov for you. Next. Who's to blame? I'll give you a new name nobody has said yet. Jeff Molson. He was a bad president, in my opinion. He chased away all the former Habs like Robinson, Waugh, Lemaire, Savard, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's still the case. So much so that they're hiring Boston people. He hired Gorton or was forced to hire Gorton. And Gorton did the same thing with the Rangers, built a soft team. None of these guys have won anything before. MSL doesn't delegate or listen to the fans yelling at him for 3 years that the system was bad. I don't
know what that
I don't
says.
know. I apologize, Habinations. I don't know what that next sentence is supposed to be. So we're just going to skip it. He says, hire an assistant. That's all he had to do. Marty St. Louis let the fans run a bus over Burrows for 2 seasons that he ran the power play. MSL is here to get us 2 more shots at a number 1 pick. And that's an interesting way to look at that. Losing Allen, and listen to this. This goes to what we were saying today. He says, losing Allen, Monahan, Kovacevic, and Harris, and replacing them with Lina, Jackeye, and Hudson. That's what the fans asked for, didn't they? We are the boss of them. Need to show we care, or they will drag this rebuild on forever, in my opinion. Go Habs, go. That's very
thought-provoking.
Yeah.
I
like it.
That's
No matter
whether you agree or disagree, it's thought-provoking.
Well, and that's what we love.
Stir the pot.
We love that our fans and listeners and viewers they run the gamut on their opinions and perspectives, but we always encourage really friendly debate. We are open to anybody's outlook, and you put together either an enthusiastic or well thought out response, and you got a pretty good chance of making it on the show. So we appreciate all of your submissions. Can't wait to hear more from you this week. So we will just have 2 games between now and our next episode. Saturday night, of course, Shea Weber getting welcomed into the Canadiens Ring of Honor before the game at the Bell Center. between the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Montreal Canadiens. That's going to happen. But also, Rick, who is in the lineup for the Blue Jackets, who will be making his return to the Bell Center?
At Sean Monahan. Also probably an emotional game for Cole Caulfield.
Yes.
Given his tribute to Johnny Gaudreau and Columbus being in the building.
Yeah, I think so too. And then the Habs do not play then. They play on Monday. Yes, they'll play. They have two weeks in a row with a Monday game. Who decided on that? But they will be home again on Monday, where Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers are going to be in the building. 7:30 p.m. start time, not 7 o'clock on Monday. And then they will have the rest of the week off. They won't play again until Saturday night. So those are the only two games that will take place between now and our next episode, which will be next Saturday, November 23rd. And so just don't forget to hit subscribe. We never want you to miss an episode. We've got lots more fun coming. Don't forget to get in your responses to this week's Canadiens Connection question of the week. And we thank you so much for being here with us every single week. We look forward to being here with you. And we'll see you again here next Saturday for another great episode of the Canadiens Connection podcast right here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.